Good morning. This is Pastor Marvin Osborn of the First Baptist Church of Birmingham, Ohio. And I hope you're well today. We're in Galatians chapter 5. Yesterday we talked about verse 19 about the works of the flesh are manifest. These are things that reveal themselves that we should when someone says they're saved or that you're saying you're saved, but these things are indicators that we're still living a fleshly lifestyle. He's already said that the flesh and the spirit are constantly at war with one another. That you cannot be a godly man and still manifest or live a life that's where these things are being projected or being embraced in your life. We hear about these preachers out there that preach a wonderful message on Sunday, but they've been living in an adulterous relationship for 10 years, 20 years, or whatever else, and they think that those two things kind of will that the spirit will override their fleshly appetites, and Paul's saying here that hey, the flesh and the spirit are contrary to one another. And again, it's that illustration about the two dogs. Which one, the one that wins is the one I feed. And if you continue to feed the flesh, that flesh is always going to win. And so Paul gives us an indicators of what this lifestyle, this fleshly lifestyle, looks like. And we know a lifestyle is what begins in the mind and reveals itself in our heart, does it not? And so he talked about adultery, he talked about fornication, uncleanness, and lascivious activities. And so he's saying sex that breaks the covenant of marriage, and that's sex, fornication, sex prior to the covenant of marriage. That's all sexual relations prior to being married. Uncleanness, that moral impurity, and then also lasciviousness, which is uninhabited sexual indulgence. And so anything goes, and certainly that would include homosexuality, transgenderism, bestiality, and pedophilia, and all that entails. And so he says those are works of the flesh. Then he goes on. He's still giving this list out. Verse 20, he says idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variance, emulations, wrath, strife, seditions, and heresies. So let's go through each one of those in verse 20. He says that the works of the flesh is also revealed in idolatry, the worship of a man-made image or object, anything that we put in front of God. People will put sports in front of God. You rarely see them on during football season because they're out at the stadium tailgating hours before the game even begins, because that is their priority. They're putting sports ahead of God. People who put their kids' sports programs ahead of God. They're not there on Sunday mornings because the kids at playing football or soccer or baseball or whatever. It's money. It could be people. It could be a career. It could be family. It could be any number of things that we put ahead of God. And certainly we would say idols, those you would pray to a saint, or you pray to Mary, or you pray to an angel. That's idolatry. That's wicked. It is sinful. That is that of the flesh. Number two, he says witchcraft. It's interesting, this word witchcraft comes from the Greek word pharmakia, which is where we get the word pharmacy. Pharmakia, pharmacy. And this speaks of kind of mind-altering drugs. The drugs that are used in the practice of witchcraft, or something that alters the mind. And certainly as you alter the mind, it alters our perspective on God and our perspective on life itself. And so, yes, you could talk about not only drugs that you get from the pharmacy, and I'm not saying all drugs are wrong. I'm saying that there's some drugs, as we know, that begin to that we take to alleviate a pain, and eventually we become addicted to those drugs, right? We've seen that with fentanyl and other things that are out there that are being marketed as helpful. I'm not sure fentanyl is marketed that way, but there's a lot of drugs that are out there that you take initially, but also eventually they take you, right? We see that with alcohol. We see that with mind-altering drugs, mushrooms, and so forth. And he says that all these things. This is something that you and I need to stay away from. This is not of God. People say, "Well, it's natural. These things grow in the wilderness." Yes, so does arsenic, and you're not looking to consume arsenic. You don't. You got to be wise about these things. People say, is alcohol a sin? And I'm not going to say it's a sin one way or another. I know it would be a sin for me to drink it, and I'd warn you to be careful of this because it's mind altering. People do things that they would not normally do if they weren't on that consuming beer or wine or whiskey or whatever else. And so stay away from the marijuana, stay away from these things that would cause you to do things you wouldn't normally do. He goes, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, that hostility toward one another, variance, which is a contention or strife. These are kind of fitting in together. You have hatred toward one another. You have a hostility toward one another. You have contentions and strife with people. Emulations is a word for jealousies or rivalries. You're not content with what you have, whether it's your husband, whether it's that car or that house or those clothes or the children or whatever else. You're always coveting what other people have. And so he says, hatred, variance, emulations, wrath, or outbursts of anger. That idea that you can't control yourself. You may be in a good mood, and all of a sudden someone says something, and all of a sudden, boom, you went from 0 to 100 in a matter of seconds. You ever meet somebody like that? You're always walking on eggshells around them. You never know if you're going to say the wrong thing at the wrong time, and all of a sudden now you're in a battle that you didn't expect to be in. He says that's not a righteous indignation. That's an unrighteous indignation. You're a person who cannot control one's flesh. He says seditions. So you have idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variance, emulations, wrath, and seditions or factions or dissensions, division. People who cause division. There's some people that are they like to stir the pot. They like to see people argue and bitter. They like to cause division within the church or division within a family, with division in the workplace. He says that's not a work of the Spirit. That's someone who has a problem with their flesh. That's a person who has a problem in life itself. These people cause problems. They're problem makers who cause troubles in their life. And he says heresies. Doctrinal error, one that causes church splits. Those people who come in and they have an agenda. They're going to get to a place where they can be part of the church or maybe teaching a certain class, and all of a sudden they start putting in a false doctrine. I've seen churches who did that where the pastors were not as vigilant as they should have been in vetting these people, and they get in there because there's a hole that needs to be filled, and this person seemingly is spiritually mature enough, and there is no oversight to hear what they're teaching, and he's teaching a damnable heresy, and before you know it, it's like a cancer that will split the church and cause shipwrecked lives along the way. He says these people are working in the flesh. So he gives us adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lasciviousness, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variance, emulations, wrath, seditions, and heresies. He's given us what the flesh looks like. And so you and I should examine our life on the basis of this list. And he's not done yet. He's still going and making sure that we're walking in the Spirit and not in the flesh. This is Pastor Marvin Osborn saying, God loves you and I love you as well. And I'll talk to you soon.